Welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Tri-Delta podcast. I'm Lexi Leggs from our Delta Epsilon chapter at Millikin University, and I currently serve executive office here at Tri-Delta as our chapter success manager for operations. I was also lucky enough to have served as a chapter development consultant for the 2018-2019 school year, where I both traveled and helped to establish our chapter at Temple University. So shout out to Epsilon Phi chapter. And in my current role, it feels really full circle because I now supervise our team of CDCs. I help manage the hiring and onboarding processes while also providing ongoing support for them throughout the year. And that is why I am so excited to introduce today's guest, Shannon Bogardus from our Epsilon Upsilon chapter at Delaware. Shannon served as a CDC from 2022 to 2024, and she is now, very impressively, the founder and CEO of SBL Signature, a marketing and events-based company based in New Jersey, which delivers specialized marketing and consulting services. She was recently featured as an honoree in the Top 100 Innovators and Entrepreneurs magazine, recognized for her work in brand strategy, design, and philanthropic efforts. And we are so excited to be able to catch up with Shannon about her journey to becoming an entrepreneur, where she'll share advice for our young leaders that are listening and tell us a little bit more about where she is today, among other things. So Shannon, welcome back, I should say. This is not your first time on the podcast, so welcome back.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's so good to be back.
Absolutely. It's great to have you back. How have you been doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Also doing well. You know, it's a little rainy here in Dallas, but I love it nonetheless. So very excited to still be here and making dreams happening and now catching back up with you.
I love it. I love it.
Absolutely. So you graduated from Delaware and you jumped right into serving as a CDC for 2 years for Tri-Delta. Can you walk us through what that journey was like and what those first few years after college looked like for you?
Absolutely. My undergraduate career, I hopped right into leadership. I served as my chapter's collegiate president when I was only a sophomore. This was on old officer structure with the new slating timeline. So I had the opportunity to serve a year and a half, and it taught me so many different skills, especially at a young age, but it really told me and showed me how being a young leader, there's a lot of imposter syndrome that comes into that. And when you have a lot of big goals, also as a founding chapter, I'm sure you can also really emulate with this as well in your experience, how impact is really something that we can kind of hit the ground running, and it's where that imposter syndrome is something that you kind of have to work through. And that's what led me into really being passionate about being a CDC post-grad and how I can kind of serve as a mentor, as somebody for these younger women to look forward to when it comes to navigating those types of feelings while in high stakes leadership roles. And it really taught me not only a lot about myself, but how I really enjoy helping people. And it's kind of what brought me into my new experience and other endeavors that I'm experiencing today.
Yes, I love that. I love how you mentioned imposter syndrome. I think it's definitely something that impacts our young leaders and even our consultants too, who have to battle their own imposter syndrome and then turn around and be cheerleaders and confidence boosters for the collegians they work with. So I love that. You kind of already started to mention that, but how would you say your experience as a CDC has helped to shape you into the leader and entrepreneur you are today?
So we learn a lot about being able to take feedback pretty early. I think this is something that during my own professional experiences, it was my first lesson, dare I say, and being from New Jersey, being from a very Italian household, to say the least, one of the big pieces of feedback I received at an earlier age was that I talk pretty quickly. And it's something that I never really necessarily second guessed myself on, especially because at Delaware, I think so many of us from New York, New Jersey, Long Island are so used to that dynamic metropolitan lifestyle where everything is really quick and high energy. I learned that sometimes we have to turn it down a little bit, and that's okay, but we can still represent the best attributes of who we are and really showcasing them into a professional setting. And that really showed me not only how to take feedback, but learning that sometimes we have to make small tweaks, but really being able to change and alter and catering who we are, but also how we communicate to our different audiences is something that is very zenith in any type of industry that you're a part of, whether it be the consulting industry, finance, the arts, all of those different pieces and nuances all come back down to the communication styles and really showcasing those professional abilities to our best efforts, I should say.
Yeah, absolutely. I love how you talked about that because I think understanding and knowing your audience is such a key competencies that many employers are looking for right now. And I think about the CDC roles and how many different stakeholders they have to navigate, from the collegiate leaders to the volunteers to fraternity and sorority staff, and sometimes even campus administrators. Just being able to shift and build rapport is such a key a skill that definitely takes some time to build. So I love that you talked about that. Speaking of the CDC role, what did working with collegiate women as a CDC teach you about leadership, confidence, and growth?
Yes. College women are so resilient. That's like one of my favorite lines that I would give to any type of employer or recruiter or anyone outside of the higher education realm. And that resilience that we see on these college campuses is really something that I wish we would kind of exercise more as I'm entering into my mid to later 20s, because it allows us to be vulnerable with ourselves, but it also allows us to really gain that independence and allowing us our own space to fail, because that's okay. Sometimes those vulnerable parts can be our greatest assets and showing the greatest sides of who we are as people, but also how we can evolve within our leadership, how we can kind of exercise those muscles or those skills that we might not have necessarily done so before in the past. And I think really working with them, but also working with myself and my coworkers and all those other pieces together are all things that I think we definitely should talk about a little bit more as we talk about leadership and what it means to be resilient. And I think they are just some of the most, again, resilient people in the world, so fun to work with. And I absolutely loved working with collegiate women, truly.
Yeah, absolutely. I can only echo all of that. I definitely agree with the resilience, the energy they bring. And we just came off of CLC not too long ago. And I think I'm still feeling all of the energy and excitement from that weekend alone. And so many ideas that come from being in that space and with young women who are okay with trying and testing things out, which is so cool. So definitely agree. Would you say there are any parallels between, say, like sorority recruitment or just the fraternity and sorority life industry in general and the work that you're doing now with events and consulting?
Yes, it wasn't until I was working with some of the women at Wisconsin. I believe they were doing, I think it was a 75th anniversary or 50th anniversary, some really big milestone. And I was working really closely with the VPO before this, who was putting on the event. And I really got to see the behind the scenes look of not only what a well executed event looked like, but it was also a very formal event that took place on a couple different venues on campus, had a lot of different creative flares and flavors and all those different pieces for a full 2-day weekend event, from the invitation to booking on campus, like soup to nuts, 0 to 100, the entire piece together. And it wasn't until I really experienced that anniversary and being able to share that moment with her did I really see how a lot of what we do, not only as leaders in women in Greek life, but also beyond that, of what it takes to put on these different types of events. And that was a really fundamental moment for me with thinking about pursuing this entrepreneurial venture, is kind of what I've been calling it lately. And that those high stakes, kind of those high pressure, being able to thrive under pressure, quick pace, really type A when it comes to planning, is something that I really enjoyed. And going back to what I said a little bit earlier, I love helping people, and being able to marry and accumulate all of those different pieces together is really like running a small recruitment in a way at times, especially when you look at the SEC, right, for different places like Mississippi State, Big Ten, anything in between. We see all of those stakes kind of come together from all that behind the scenes work and putting it out there for everybody else to enjoy. And so those parallels together really did prepare me for not only being able to work with so many different people, but also really enjoying these large scale events that I've been able to put on. So yes, absolutely. Doing all these recruitments trained me well.
Absolutely. I think there's a joke out there somewhere about women that lead sorority recruitments can run businesses. And I 1000% believe
It's
that.
true.
And I know it's a sisterhood and that is what it is first, but it does function like a small business for a lot of these chapters. So
100%.
agree.
100%. Yep.
So after you finished up your term in such an impactful role with TriDelta, what did that crossroads moment look like for you in deciding what was next?
I think especially in our 20s, when you're going in between almost like an internship phase to your first professional job phase to almost a couple years later, now that you're a seasoned professional, what that looks like, what your next move is, you're still kind of figuring out who you are, what drives you, all those pieces together sometimes comes with a little bit of resistance. And that's something that I know I experienced alongside a few other people who were wrapping up the 2024 year. And I think when we reach these different points in our lives, whether it be professional, personal, etc., resistance is about switching your path. And sometimes we see that in trying new things or moving to a new place, all those different pieces together where if you can't necessarily figure out what you want to do, trying something new. And that's something that kind of scared me because I had just been on this high for 2 years, especially being out of Texas, where it's this amazing place that I really did fall in love with. Coming back home, it was something that I was struggling with a little bit, and I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do, but I kind of knew how to get there. And it was by trying new things, moving to different places, going into New York. I had the privilege of being able to do that too, in and out, just finding things that I found the joy in. And again, that kind of led me to believe, okay, maybe this is something I should try now that I have the opportunity to do so, because you can only do it once and it's in your young or mid 20s. But now too, we see a lot of other more seasoned professionals taking a leap, and I think it's really inspiring for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the way that you frame that in resistance. Our current team actually just wrapped up their end of year, and I wish I could have had that message then so I could have said that to some of them as they're in that transition phase. But I think that's really beautiful and definitely describes a lot of what many of us, I think, went through during that transition period. So now that you're the founder of SBL Signature, what inspired you to take the leap into entrepreneurship?
I always wanted to kind of lean into that entrepreneurial side. Even when I just started out in school, I studied political science and communications, but I always had this thought of doing something business related. And I know that can span over so many different industries, finance, marketing, etc. And it's something that not necessarily I regret, but I do wish I kind of like leaned into it a little bit more earlier on. But I mean, that's okay. It's where I am today. And one of the few pieces that beyond like your childhood lemonade stands, I actually started my own little side hustle my freshman year when I was in school, when I had absolutely no money. And I started my own seamstress and kind of like maneuvering different garments and whatnot for the people on my floor who were going to formals and who were rushing different fraternities and things like that. And it was able to sustain me within the entire year, which I thought was really cool. So I always want to that end, explore this entrepreneurial side. And now that I've kind of done so, it's leaping into this unknown where I don't really know a whole lot about owning a business, but being able to practice that resourcefulness competency is something that has really led me to kind of build more of a structure and a foundation with these different pieces. And it's been really exciting to kind of watch it grow, even though it is taking, a little bit longer, but I'm really happy with every step of the way that I've learned so far. It's been a really cool journey.
Yes, I love that. I love hearing a little bit more about your background too and side businesses and hustles. I did not know you were a seamstress, but that is cool. That's fun. Just so multifaceted. So, SBL Signature offers specialized marketing, events, and consulting services. What gap did you see in the market that made you think, I can do this differently?
I think when we're looking at big brands, and I've noticed that we see this a lot on even like social media, I think cancel culture is definitely something that can come into the discussion too, is that the word authenticity is something that really started to pop up as I was kind of going down this rabbit hole of like, what do I want to do? How can I help people? What am I doing differently to get myself out there? Especially in this big populace where we see a lot of different events, and wedding venues and ceremonial things, all those different pieces together. And I think that a lot of these bigger name brands, not all of them obviously, but we really are lacking this this piece of authenticity. And I think that a lot of these pillars about being intentional are the things that come into fruition with my own business and being able to really dig into those. Who are you and what are you trying to achieve? And I think that a lot of people love using things like recycled, repurposed, sustainable, again, those kind of like buzzwords that we hear within the industry, but we're not necessarily seeing what that means in practice. And so being able to distinguish those things of not only finding the pieces of said brand or said company, but really showcasing who they are coming into fruition in the most authentic way. And I think that's where we see those differences, not only with my own brand, but some of these more successful brands that really are practicing what they preach and putting all those different pieces out there. And that's the sticking point when it comes to different consumers.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. It almost kind of reminds me of Simon Sinek's golden circle theory. It's like that why,
Yes.
that authenticity being your why, and that's
Yes.
what really sets them apart. I love that. So speaking of your why, can you tell us a little bit more about what it is that you do and who you serve?
Yes. So I have a multifaceted approach. It started off when I started helping some of my friends with their resumes, also trying to find jobs in that kind of 2 to 3 year pivot or shift, I guess you could say. And it really showed me how purposeful branding is. And I never really did a lot of marketing, or like e-commerce type of things during undergrad, but I really learned the importance of building a strong brand, especially when you're going into the professional world. And so beyond all the resume pieces, the advice that I had, I really loved the scope of the tools to build a brand, not only for a young professional, but also for a company and or a consumer who is creating some type of celebration. So building all of those pieces together, I was able to tap into a network here of not only different people who are just either entering their professional world or pivoting, as well as different moments, celebrations, etc., with so many different brides here in New Jersey. They love the Jersey Shore here. And I mean, it's great. But also different nonprofits and other upcoming small businesses who are trying to get their name out. And sometimes we kind of, again, lack those foundational pieces of like who you are, what your brand brings to the world, and how can we craft that and being intentional with the type of events that we're putting on. One example is a paint and sip for a realtor that I had a couple weeks ago. Another would be this really big elaborate gala that I had for a new nonprofit that's been just trying to kind of get their feet off of the ground and going through the motions beyond these different types of events. Building the tools and also the curriculum within those different pieces is essentially what the brand is. So again, kind of long-worded answer, but a lot of different buckets in essentially what I have been creating is personal brands.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. It definitely makes a lot of sense why you would be in that space, especially transitioning out of the consultant role into this. It's a perfect next step. And so totally get it. I think you're kind of mentioning a little bit of this. You might notice that a lot of young women in their mid to late 20s are navigating an uncertain job market right now. Probably everybody, honestly. What career advice do you give to someone who might be feeling stuck or unsure about the next move, or maybe even an older woman who's looking into pivoting careers?
Absolutely. Yes. I think that definitely goes back to on that resistance piece. And like, if you are experiencing that type of resistance, you're either on the wrong path or you need to change your tactic. Or sometimes we say it's like hitting a wall. And I really think this is where intuition comes into play. And if you're itching to try that new city, go. If you want to enroll in a new class and build a new skill, do it. And it's okay to say no if that's something that you don't like. I think we've also, and sometimes I think about this coming out of COVID or lockdown, that we've kind of lost this space for a third party, right? Like where you're going to go after work with your coworkers, or building other pieces where maybe you want to go home, but it's still a really nice day out. And losing those spaces means that you're losing your network. And it's a saying out there, your network is in fact your net worth. This is where I definitely would challenge people to start building those third-party spaces or try something new like a coffee shop, a new location, and just talk to people. I think that not only is the market tough, but it's also changing. And a lot of those opportunities that we see within a standard recruitment aren't necessarily something that is necessarily their post-grad, right? Like we don't see as many recruitment events. I was even on the phone the other day with a client who had to be invited to said recruitment event. Like we see this older model that's shifting and changing, but I don't necessarily know if that leadership piece is coming in together. So essentially trying new things, trying out new spaces, and building new skills to seek out opportunities that add to your resume. One, for example, I just enrolled in a coding class in my community college because I'm obsessed with NASA these days and Artemis too. And it's something I've been so hyper fixated on, and I have the time to do so. So it's something that I'm going to pursue. All those different pieces accumulated together can really help you stick out, even though the market is tough, even though the economy is also a little bit difficult. But building said pieces and all those things together can really come into fruition on an application for sure.
Absolutely. I love that. Kind of diversifying those experiences, continuing to be a learner, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, maybe all of that might be necessary to help take that next step. And I love the way you
Yes.
frame that. What advice do you have for women whose careers may not look traditional, say like a consultant role?
Absolutely. I think, again, it's where we kind of need to try new things. And that's where, even if you are a seasoned professional, I would totally make the account of go travel. And this is where my inner consultant really comes into is going to a new place and finding new hobbies, new things that are just grounding for you. That's something where I think, again, when you're on this path that might not necessarily feel like a straightforward path, it's about where you can go along the way and push yourself along the way, like creating opportunities that challenge you and that will test you on different things. Again, pushing those pieces into that transition piece, because it is okay to be uncomfortable. And that's where I think, even if you are more of a seasoned professional, going to a talk, a conference, maybe a new country, and falling in love with a new language, you never know the opportunities that might be there once you kind of go off that path of least resistance.
Yes, absolutely. Beautiful message there. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you have clearly hit the ground running in your career. Where do you think your drive and motivation come from?
I think this is something that I definitely want to talk about my home life a little bit more. I grew up in a very Sicilian/Italian American home. I had the opportunity of having both my parents around, but also my grandparents, and they had a really big impact with me and my cousins. I come from a huge family. I have 31st cousins, for example, and we we all live in the same town, the same county here in Jersey. And one of the things that I think was so fundamental in our upbringing was this piece of being able to be independent. My grandfather, he came off the boat and went through Ellis Island when he was about 6 years old and built this beautiful company for himself and his family. And I think that learning those lessons very early on, but also being able to experience those lessons early on, is something that was very zenith with me and fundamental in the person that I became today. One example, my grandmother hated when the kids would be in the kitchen because she thought we were going to get hurt. And my grandfather always said, like, nope, go learn something. So I could create a 5-course meal by the time I was about 10 years old. And not everybody, can say things like that or have necessarily those opportunities. So I learned at a really young age being able to push myself, as well as pushing past some of those boundaries that may have seemed a little bit scared or intimidating, is something that, again, I do give the credit to both my grandparents, that independence piece, but also giving yourself permission to have that agency is really fundamental in what drives me today.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Sounds like some very important family values passed down that help to really shape you and keep you driving. So I can definitely agree with that and have similar sentiments too. So great. Are there any like mantras or routines or maybe mindset shifts that have helped you to stay focused as a young leader?
Absolutely. One thing that I really do believe is that there's power in our words that we put out into the world. And I really am a big believer in creating some type of vision board. And this is where my goal setting consulting kind of comes into play, is that I create a vision board for every single year, but I also try to curate a theme in a way, or one word as like the definition of that year. So for 2025, for example, it was healing, and 2026 was intentional. I did kind of change it again with my Artemis 2 obsession, where I usually have like my wallpaper or my phone screen as the vision board, and I changed it to Christina Cook, and there's a little speech bubble of her saying lock in. So I've definitely evolved my word for the year. But I think, again, having kind of those goals set in mind and constantly being reminded of them, that repetition, those words that have power really comes into play. I also love a stop and smell the roses. I'm someone who can definitely get caught in the moment for things. And it's something that I definitely hold near and dear to me as grounding. Like, stop, take in the moment, and enjoy every piece of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love the lock in for sure. I might have to take that one, and hopefully somebody found like if they can take there as well. Yes, love that. How do you personally define success, and has that definition changed over time for you?
Yes. Success, it's not measurable, and there's no timeline to it. I think this is where imposter syndrome can also kind of start to fall into our lives, especially being in your 20s, both your early 20s and your mid 20s. And we see a lot of different professional, personal, especially in this age where we have a lot of social media and LinkedIn and all these different pieces together. We can definitely turn to comparing ourselves based off of others' achievements. We see where sometimes even our inner circles start to gain traction when we see other professional, personal highlights, milestones, etc. And sometimes we can lose sight of our own journey, where I think with being success, you determine your own success by creating your own rules, by creating your own standards and your own volition when it comes to not only pursuing success, but achieving success. Because we could definitely conform or sometimes fall into different beliefs that our standard or our timeline seems fit by society and friends, etc. But aligning yourself with your character and the abilities of who you are, that's success. Perform it every single day into that alignment, and you will be a successful person.
Absolutely. I love that. I know I mentioned we were just at CLC, and it's also fresh in my mind. One of our keynote speakers spoke about the fact that there is no one size fits all approach to creating success. And I feel like that's what you just spoke to here, and how playing to your strengths can really help to contribute to success. And sometimes comparison is the thief of joy. So
Yes.
figuring out what it looks like for yourself, I think, is key. And I love that you found that for yourself too. When you think about leadership, and especially as a young entrepreneur, what are the most important qualities to cultivate early on?
So I have three, again, my consultant, I have three things. So being able to lean and being comfortable when you're uncomfortable is something that it takes a lot of practice to do so. And I think one of the really great things with our consultant program too is we're able to practice that at a really young age, where I think not a lot, but many other people don't necessarily have the opportunity to try that until maybe they're in their mid to late 20s, by moving to a new city, doing like a big career shift or pivot, and being able to be comfortable, like what I said before, while being uncomfortable. That's one thing that the earlier you can do, the better. The next is allowing to trust yourself. So providing experiences that try new things, leap into a new opportunity, move to a new place. That is something that if you do it and you can do it well, you will be able to trust yourself through anything, any type of life change, professional, personal, etc. Being able to not only be vulnerable, but trusting in that vulnerability is absolutely paramount. And then finally, staying grounded in the things that make you who you are as a person. Lexi, I know you're an early workout morning girly like me, and I absolutely love it. And those are the small things that I think can really shape into not only that discipline piece, but being able to be true in who you are, and the priorities that you create are absolutely zenith early on into your career.
I love that. I love the way that you've packaged that. Of course, in threes, very
And
much.
threes.
Yes, absolutely. But that trust in and being true to yourself and grounded in those values, I think, is really definitely very key early on as a young leader. So, and the discipline too.
Yes. Yep. It's hard, but once you do it, it
Exactly.
becomes normal.
Right, exactly. Then the payoff is always worth it. That's what I always tell
Yes.
myself. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Tri Delta has clearly played such an important role in your collegiate and post grad experience. How is Tri Delta still a part of your life today?
Yes. So I recently took on, was it recent? Maybe last September. I think it kind of recent. I took on a new role as a financial specialist with Erica. And it's something where, again, I wasn't necessarily like the VPO, director member finances. I was more so like the overseer in that role. I was really excited to take on that new position and trying this entirely new kind of uncharted territory, dare I say, with learning about finances and budgeting and all the different pieces kind of behind the scenes on all of our small businesses of our chapters. So that's been really exciting to reconnect with some people I haven't been able to reconnect with, while also in a way being a mentor to our finance teams. I absolutely love them. They're so great and they're so smart. Makes
Yes.
it so much easier.
Absolutely. I have found that they know how to put the right people in those finance roles, and we appreciate that and appreciate the work that you and so many of our volunteers do for our collegiate chapters. I know I could never do the work of a financial specialist. It is so critical to what we do as an organization. So thank you for that continued service. And thank you to any volunteers that are listening.
Yes.
And so, can you also talk with us about how you give back in your philanthropic efforts?
I absolutely love working with some of the small nonprofits within my area, and there are a number of them being right outside of New York. There's a lot of different social impact work that I've been doing. Again, kind of leaning into that finance piece with my impact investment community and being able to see that kind of like on a larger scale, as well as the National Italian American Foundation, because why not? Need that heritage piece too. And they're actually in New York as well, which has made it really easy to connect with other young people. I'm in this new young professional network community, which has been a really exciting opportunity as well. So it doesn't always have to be, a big, large organization. Sometimes you could start small and just really experiencing not only the impact, but also the community that is fostered there within.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's twofold, right? Giving back and lifting others up while also continuing to build your network. I think that is a perfect way of phrasing that. So, as I mentioned earlier, and a big congratulations again, you were recognized in the top 100 as one of the top innovators and entrepreneurs. What did that recognition mean to you?
Oh, I felt so validated again, being that I kind of had a gap between the nonprofit space and being in higher education into, okay, what are we doing? What is something that your career path looks like? And seeing that accolade, also putting it on my LinkedIn, obviously, but having those two pieces together just felt very validating for me, and that I was able to take a step into the right direction and really just, again, being vulnerable and trusting myself throughout that process and what that meant, but also how I can get the word out more with helping others and taking on different clients, maybe outside the tri-state area, are all things that I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, that is so exciting. Well, I love that. I was so excited when I saw it when you posted it on Instagram, and I was like, wow, just so impressive. But definitely not shocked by any means. You've always
Oh,
exuded that commitment to your work and creating success. So just love
thank
to see that for
you.
you. Yes. So what's next for SBL Signature and for you personally?
Yes, so I'm looking to grow, whether that be here at the Jersey Shore or maybe even New York. I always tell people that I'm not necessarily a city girl. I love New York, but I love being able to leave New York and come back home. But it's something where I could definitely see myself taking that next step, taking on a new clientele outside of just the Jersey Shore area, and looking at different event spaces, what that looks like, even women outside of the corporate setting, maybe leaning into entertainment and media is something that I've really been looking into, showcasing some more local artists and how we can kind of build that brand up a little bit more, especially on the financing side of things, is something that I felt very passionate about lately. So I think taking that next step is something that hopefully we'll see in the near future, and what that might mean with a permanent or semi-permanent space to set everything up, but still kind of in the works. But big ideas, definitely speaking them into existence, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. Part of that mantra is just claiming it and putting it on that vision board and knowing you'll make it there. So excited to see what is next. If you
Thank
can
you.
share with us, are there any upcoming projects or goals that you're especially excited about right now?
Yes, so I have a couple other bigger events with some of the other nonprofits that I've been working with. We kind of hit the ground running with their different curriculum and the pieces that we're putting together. We're looking to charter this nonprofit at actually a couple different collegiate level universities, again, mostly in the tri-state area, what that looks like. And then also gaining traction on the legislative side of things. This nonprofit is a bill working towards protections and a new system when it comes to women entering the emergency room, and how we can be intentional when it comes to the reproductive side of things, but also with the health and safety side of things, specifically for women. And this new bill will essentially, again, serve as a protective means, and we're hopefully looking to get that off the docket and passed within the next couple weeks. So a little mix of a lobbying in here, but again, putting it out there as something that will be more of a norm.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like such impactful work that you're also contributing to, which I love to hear. So thank you for that and sharing that insight and little sneak peeks. Can't wait to see what else is on the horizon for you too. So as we wrap up, if you could give one final piece of advice to young women with big dreams, what would it be?
Do it. Lock in, as my wallpaper said, lock in and just do it. Trust yourself, trust your intuition, know who your people are and that they are the ones who can get you there. Lean into it when you have to, and don't ever stop. Even if you feel that resistance, pause, turn, do what you need to do, and you can achieve great things. Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. Just short and sweet and just do it. Almost. I
Just
hope
do
we
it.
don't get in trouble, Nike. Sponsor us. Let us know. We would take that. I love it. Well, Shannon, it has been so great getting a chance to catch up with you and hear more about all the success that you've had and how happy you have been. So thank you for sharing great advice with our listeners and checking in with us today. We hope to see you all in Denver for our biennial convention. If you have not registered already, there is still time to register to join us. You do not have to be a voting delegate. You can just come and spend some time and get a chance to explore Denver and connect with your sisters. We would love to have you all there. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and rate our podcast. We love 5-star ratings, even though we do everything else in 3s. Again, thank you so much for joining us. And until next time, Delta Love.
Thank you so much, Lexi. It was so nice chatting with you and catching up.